Welcome to the HBCU podcast. You're listening to episode 53. If you're an avid listener or just joining us for the first time, here we're joined by some awesome HBCU grads in the form of co-host and guest. We also focus on all the great things HBCU alumni are doing all over the world. This episode is all about the historic election of Howard University alumna, Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm joined by political organizer, social justice advocate, and Claflin University alumnus, Derrick Quarles. We recap the 2021 inauguration, our hopes and expectations for the Biden-Harris administration, and uplift the HBCU graduates who are at the helm of this political success. Keep listening. It's the HBCU podcast. So, Derrick, welcome to the HBCU podcast. I'm so excited to start off 2021 with a podcast episode with, of course, a Claflinite.
Yeah, well, again, thank you, Natasha, for having me on the HBCU podcast. I'm Derrick Quarles. I am an alum of the Claflin University, the greatest HBCU, that's right, in the whole wide world. And but I, in addition to that, I have held several different roles since graduating. I worked for the Senate, the South Carolina Senate. I have worked for several different nonprofits, and I've also worked for several different universities and social justice organizations. Mm-hmm. And so I do have a plethora of experience in political organizing and social justice work. And for me, when I first went to Claflin, I was a biology major, chemistry minor. My plan was to go to medical school to become a psychiatrist because I always wanted to help people. And so my first 3 years of college, I was a biology major. And then I got to my junior year, and then I started seeing a lot of Black guys being killed by police. And I think that was around the time Trayvon Martin was killed. And so for me, it kind of led me to have a reality check and say, wait a minute, do I really want to go into medicine or do I want to do something different? And so that kind of led me into switching my major, which people usually don't do that junior year.
Yeah.
But I switched my major to political science and criminal justice. And the rest has been history. And so I've had the opportunity to, again, organize around, Black men and Black women and Black children being killed by law enforcement. I've had the opportunity to work several different elected officials around the country. I've had the opportunity to go to the Obama White House at the invitation of then Vice President Joe Biden. And so I've had some phenomenal experiences. And even today, I work for a nonprofit that's headquartered in California, but I do advocacy work all over the country from here in South Carolina. So I'm just glad to be able to use my degree, because a lot of times we get these degrees and we end up doing stuff that's not even like in the scope of our degree.
Right.
And so I'm glad to be able to use my degree to do the work that I love to do.
Yeah. I did not even know that about you, that when you started out at Claflin, that you were a biology major. And surprisingly, well, not really surprisingly, but I hear that story a lot of people who started off in biology and then transitioned to something else. But it's really awesome to see you had that kind of pivot in your life and the work that you're doing now, because it just seems like it was something that you were meant to do,
I agree. I definitely agree. And like you said, I don't talk about my switch of majors much because, again, most people don't switch their junior year. They switch that freshman or sophomore year, because by the time you get to a junior, you're like doing your actual coursework. And so it was painful, but at the same time, I was doing what I did what I felt like I was supposed to be doing. So, and I don't feel bad about it.
Yeah. Well, that is a rundown, guys. And of course, me and Derrick, we're going to have a episode strictly dedicated to who is Derrick Quarles, because of course, I definitely want to do that. But today he's almost like our political correspondent, because of course he's giving you the rundown of what the work that he does and what he seeks to accomplish out here and making an impact on this country and on this world. So of course we want to talk about the current status of American government right now. And that is the latest, the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And with this being Black History Month, it seemed like a really great time to just kind of run down. Let's talk about where we are, let's talk about the joy. Let's talk about the trepidation that we have about it. Let's talk about what we think the next 3 or 4 years are going to look like. So again, let's jump right into that. I want to say I had to go back and watch a lot of inauguration coverage because when it was happening, I was at work, unfortunately. And so they were streaming it at work. So I don't want to, make them seem like, we weren't able to do that. But I had to, make sure I was doing what I was supposed to be doing and also trying to catch glimpses of what was happening. And from what I saw, it was an amazing sight to see. Didn't think that was something that was going to be happening where it did, because the prior week, some crazy stuff was happening over at the Capitol.
Absolutely.
So let's just jump right in and just kind of let's talk about our first African American Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Yep. So as you mentioned, it's no secret that the week prior to the inauguration, there was this chaos at the Capitol. Crazy people, just crazy white people, I'll say.
Yeah.
That took over they literally took over the Capitol, and they did it, using the terminology that they are protesting. And I didn't see a protest. What I saw was a bunch of lunatics, invading the U.S. Capitol, and that's something that has never been done, or hadn't been done since the 1700s, and probably won't ever be done again unless these folks have the opportunity to do so. And seeing this country elect the very first Black vice president, for me personally, it was a phenomenal experience, because watching Vice President Harris come through the ranks, the local level in California, and rising up to Attorney General, and then going from that role to U.S. Senate. And in my opinion, my humble opinion, she was one of the greatest U.S. senators in terms of, when Donald Trump was going through his impeachment trial. She was one of the greatest senators who was very tactful, but also she was one person that Donald Trump didn't really play with. Like, he knew that he couldn't, fool her. And so I appreciate her, for having that resilience and not being afraid to stand on what she believes in.
Now, you've met her before, right?
Yes. Many times. And what's so cool about her is, like, she's just so down to earth. Like, she's like your auntie. She's like your next door neighbor. Like, she's just really down to earth.
I get that from her.
Yeah, and of course she's an AKA, and so she is a member of your sorority. That's right. She also is a graduate of Howard University, at HBCU, and so again, just having that connection to her, through Divine Nine and through the HBCU, where it just further, helps us to understand, like, that she's a real person, and she has feelings and she has emotions, and again, she's somebody that we can relate to.
Yeah. Now, I'm glad you bring that up, because of course this is the HBCU podcast, and we will of course be getting down to the brass tacks of HBCUs and Kamala coming from Howard and all that good stuff. But just talking about how relatable, approachable, and all of that she was. I remember when she was a senator, or when she was running for president initially, there was so much, I heard a lot of backlash about her and her work as an attorney general, and the people who were put in jail, or the people that she cracked down on, or whatever it was. And so it's interesting that it went from that was the chatter that I heard about her to where, of course, she is now. So talk a little bit about, I guess, how the opinions of people, or how you think the opinions of people change so quickly when it comes to politics. because she was
Yeah.
definitely on one side of the coin, at least in conversations that I heard, to like being, of course, heralded and hailed right now. So,
Yeah. So the role of an attorney general is unique in that their role is to arrest bad people. Their role is, I mean, that's their job, is to lock people up. And so obviously you don't get to the role or the rank of attorney general in a state like California or any state
right.
without having a pretty solid record of doing the right thing in terms of law enforcement. Now, what we did see, while she was attorney general, is we saw a lot of black people be arrested and go to prison for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go back and look at the crimes that they were convicted of, not saying that they were, because I mean I don't know, I wouldn't dare to see the
Each and
person do
every
the crime.
person, right.
Correct. But crime was high, and so her job, again, she was elected to kind of curb that crime rate, and so in that sense she did her job. Now, in terms of locking up black folks and that kind of thing, I too took issue with that initially. But then when you start doing your own research, and the reason why I took issue with it is because number one, I allowed the headlines to kind of lead me in that direction, and I also
Yeah.
allowed the opinions of people to lead me. And then when I started doing my own research and looking into her record for myself and seeing, how she has since since she's been a senator, she's voted on almost everything that has been introduced around criminal justice reform.
Mm-hmm.
And so knowing that she has since changed the tone of what she was doing in California, and because as a U.S. senator, she has way more power and way more autonomy to make an impact, not just in California but around the nation. And
Right.
so, just seeing the work that she's done as a senator, in terms of criminal justice reform, that's what led me to say, all right, you know what, she did what she did in California. You know, she had a job to do, but now in the Senate, she's doing a job, and again, she's turning things around, and so. But yeah, in terms of people, like people will look at channels, the CNN, or look at MSNBC or Fox News, and they'll allow one little clip to
The
determine how
sound
they feel about
bites.
somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you got to do the research for yourself. You got to go and not just read like mainstream media sources. You got to go and find like the real stuff and decipher for yourself, like if you're going to support this person, and if so, why or why not.
Right, yeah. And I love that you said that, because I think we're seeing more of that happen when it comes to politics these days. People are digging in a little bit further. The one, I guess you can kind of look at it and say, positive thing about media, at least when during the Trump era, that it made more people start to fact check things and look at what news was actually real and the things that were being reported. And so, of course, that has always been how journalism and the media should be operating, but they kind of lost their way for a very long time. And it's good to see there are more people who are privy to that now and doing their own research before they just believe any little headline. So I'm glad to see that. Well, let's talk about Kamala. Now we have to talk about the HBCU vice president of the United States. And now when this happened, I was happy. I saw it leading up. Of course, we got a lot of other HBCU politicians, people in politics all around, and we are always so happy for them. But I said one thing in the back of my mind, Derrick, I'm just going to be real. I said, you ain't going to be able to tell Howard people nothing now.
At all. I mean, because you can't tell them nothing now.
You can't.
Before, but now though.
But now, I mean, I was just like, goodness. But yeah,
but
so
rightfully so.
Rightfully so. This is true. But yeah, that was one of the things I said. I said, oh, all the people I know from Howard, we will never hear the end of it. But let's just talk about our vice president of the United States being an HBCU graduate. Of course, one of the reasons this podcast exists because I was always hearing people say things about historically black colleges and universities, and they were kind of just passing down things that other people said to them. Oh, these schools aren't the best schools for you to go to, or you can't get here from there, and just so many kind of negative things around historically black colleges and universities. And that was one of the reasons that the HBCU podcast started, because I was like, no, I want to show you this is what HBCU graduates go on to do. I want to show you the
Mm-hmm.
positive things those alumni do. And so now
Mm-hmm.
this is the best case study that anybody could
Mm-hmm.
ever create at this point. The vice president of the United States is a historically black college university graduate. So what exactly for you, what does that mean to you? Because I know for me, she is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. You also can't tell us anything. You could never before, but you really can't now. Um, so she's my soror, which I say all the
Yep.
time, and she's a HBCU grad. She's a proud black woman, and
Mm-hmm.
she's just such a positive influence. And so this means a lot for just all of us because we were able to celebrate Barack Obama when he came to office. Of course, a black man in office, and of course he was the highest office, and we were proud of that too. But being a black woman in America, this was really, really great for me to see. Like I was just overwhelmed and so excited about it. So I'm interested to know, what are your thoughts? How did you feel? How do you feel?
Yep. So, I mean, I'm still excited. Being that she is the first to do it, the first female, the first black female. She's the highest ranking female currently in the U.S. Political system,
Right.
and so it's a great feeling. Again, to know that an HBCU alum and a member of the Divine Nine has gone on to reach, the highest level in the country that you could reach, or the second highest level,
Yeah,
and to know that she will be the next president of the United States, because I believe that she will go on
I do too.
to be the president, absolutely. And so when you have these conversations with students that are transitioning from high school into college, and they're saying, "Well, I don't want to go to an HBCU because they don't really prepare you uh, for life after college," or "I don't want to go," or even students that are currently in college, like a lot of students who I was on an app the other day, and I was talking to some people who went to Michigan State,
Mm-hmm.
some black folks, and they were saying that they would have never gone to an HBCU, and they had all these reasons as to why they would not have gone to an HBCU. And obviously, this conversation was before the election, but I want to have a conversation with them now about like HBCUs not preparing folks. I mean, and Senator Harris she's just one example.
Just
There are
one.
so many other black folks who have gone on to do really phenomenal things. Not not maybe not being the vice president of the United States, but they've gone on to run really successful companies. They've gone on to be CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and so I truly believe that HBCUs, like, this is our time. And one of the reasons why HBCUs, in my opinion, has struggled to be a Harvard or a Columbia University is because just like with black folks, like we've had to like build everything from nothing. We've had to build from scratch.
Yeah.
And so even today, when you look at the amount of money that is provided to universities and colleges from the government, when you look at PWIs versus HBCUs, you can't even compare the two, because the PWIs, they get billions and trillions of dollars from the government, while HBCUs struggle to get hundreds of thousands. And a lot of times that money that we get is money that we got to pay back. Um, yeah, I encourage every young person that's considering college, not just black people, but anybody that's considering, to look at an HBCU, because HBCUs um, are producing vice presidents.
Simply put, period. But I'm so glad you said what you just said about funding for historically black colleges, because
Hmm.
that is so the one thing that I feel like, because there are tons of other issues, of course, that will need to be addressed in America, with President Biden and Vice President Harris. But one of the things I think that she will not be able to skate around, and I'm interested to know what that plan is how that we get more funds allocated towards historically black colleges and universities, and stop treating them like they're just not other colleges in this university. They have a unique origin, yes, but they are also just institutions of higher education. So why is the funding so different?
Number one, the obvious is, when you got all these white people that are in power and they are alums of all of these PWIs, then
Right.
obviously they're gonna allocate money to to the schools they're connected to, whether they're an alum, whether their child went there, whether their parents went there. They're going to make sure that those schools are taken care of first. And so, and by doing that, those schools, they have first dibs, and so they get whatever money they want to appropriate to those schools. And then they'll say, all right, well, we'll divide the rest of the money up between the other schools. And so that's one way that HBCUs are often left out or, receive like less funding. Another thing is on the state level, when you look at HBCUs, most of them are private institutions. And so they don't receive state funding from state government. And so, they do, but it's not like what the state schools would receive. And so while you have the state legislators, giving schools, $50 million, HBCUs are not getting any of that money, or they're getting, a couple $100,000, if that. And so, and then also when you look at HBCUs, like a lot of students that attend HBCUs are having to pay higher tuition. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times students aren't going to those schools because they can't afford to pay a $30,000 tuition. So they're going to go to the PWI where the tuition is $12,000. And the reason why the tuition can be $12,000 is because, again, their budget is offset with funding from the government at this PWIs. HBCUs don't have that luxury or that cushion, so they have to have these tuition prices that are comparable so that they can sustain the university.
I know I've seen a few things floating around about the different plans that have been, or pronged approach or challenges that different groups have put together and I guess sent to the White House or to their legislator to try to even the playing field when it comes to historically Black college and university funding. But in your opinion, how much do you think Kamala, being the Vice President of the United States, will start to adjust that allocation towards HBCUs?
Yeah, well, I do know that Bernie Sanders and the folks on the Senate Finance Committee have been talking about, and even folks in the House of Representatives have been talking about ways to invest more funding into HBCUs. And so, in terms of what Senator Harris is going to do, being that she's an alum of an HBCU, being that she has an affinity for HBCUs, being that she's proud of her HBCU, being that she campaigned at several HBCUs even in the middle of the pandemic, it tells me that she values HBCUs, and so I'm certain that that she's going to have a robust plan in place that's going to be one that's going to gain the support of the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the President. And it's going to be something that a sustainable model that's going to make sure that HBCUs are no longer left out of the funding that comes from the federal government.
Yeah. I, of course, have tons of other research to do on my end, too, but I will be keeping a close eye on that because I really know that is something that is just really an expectation at this point. And I don't think it's something that, of course, the American people, that's all important. I'm not saying that it isn't. And, of course, there are tons of other issues that are important that they will have to address. I mean, of course, we're in the middle of a pandemic right now. And so there are tons of things that do require their attention. But just so that there are more people who look like us in politics, there are more people who look like us in corporate places, we still continue to rely on and need historically Black colleges and universities to help produce those people. So that funding is going to be so much more important for generations to come. And
Absolutely.
That's definitely what I would really love to see happen over the next 4 or 8 years with the Biden-Harris administration.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about just more HBCU grads, because I love that. Just all of the folks who had a helping hand in getting us to where we are right now and getting Kamala Harris and Joe Biden into office. I know, of course, you're in the political world, or you at least have a lot of connections there, and we've had a lot of amazing stuff happen. We had people like another HBCU alum, Stacey Abrams, Spelman, recent election of Reverend Raphael Warnock, now Senator Warnock, Morehouse man, and, tons of other people behind the scenes whose names I may not even know that you probably know, who have just been doing the work to make sure we get to a better place, whether that's, voting, making sure votes are counted, etc. So let's talk about all of those players and how they really helped prop up the wins that we've been seeing across the United States this election.
Yeah, you mentioned some great folks, Reverend Warnock, Senator Warnock, well, Reverend Senator Warnock now.
Reverend Senator.
And of course, Stacey Abrams out of Georgia, two folks who I believe were the reason that the state of Georgia flipped and became blue. So Stacey Abrams, she, in her own right, she's recently been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
Rightfully so, and very deserving in my opinion. The other day I saw this guy on LinkedIn, and he said that while Stacey Abrams has done, a phenomenal job of leading Georgia to be blue, he was like, I don't think she's deserving of a Nobel Peace Prize. And I said, Gregory, and his name is Gregory. I said, Gregory, what else would she have to do in order to be, in your opinion, to be worthy of a Nobel Peace Prize? And I started listing all the things that she's done. Like Georgia, like the turnout in Georgia was the highest that it's been in the last 100 years.
Oh wow!
With over 156 million people going out to the polls. She launched two organizations, Fair Fight and a PAC that was working out of not just Georgia, but working across 20 different states to make sure that Black and brown people were represented at the polls. She, in my opinion, she changed the plight of American politics. And I was saying, so what else would she need to do in order to receive a Nobel Peace Prize? And he couldn't give me a real good answer. He just said that he said historically, when you get a Nobel Peace Prize, you do A, B, and C. Then I'm like, well, brother, we're not talking about historical. We're talking about this woman has changed. She's changed history. Like, this is historical. And so, so you got these, it's these kind of conversations that you have to have with folks to remind them that, while Stacey Abrams is not perfect, and while we're not going to put all of Georgia turning blue on her shoulder, for the most part, she's responsible. And so we got to give people their flowers while they're alive. And so in my opinion, she's very deserving of a Nobel Peace Prize. And I believe that she will be the first Black woman, the first Black woman governor of Georgia. And so, and then in terms of Reverend Warnock, Representative Warnock, again, he too was a catalyst in seeing Georgia turn blue. In my opinion, he came out of nowhere. So when I started doing my research on Reverend Warnock, I said, oh, he's at Ebenezer, he's done this, he was elected at the Capitol back in 2017. I said, so he's been doing the work. And so obviously when I saw that he was, a brother of Morehouse, and when I saw that he, was a member of Alpha, then I knew that we had somebody good, and that we had a very great candidate. And so I had the opportunity to go down to Georgia to help on the campaign. And I didn't charge anything. I didn't want no money. I just wanted to go to help to see this Black man get elected. And so that's what it was all about. I had a great time. And I'm happy to say that one of my good friends is now a staff member of Reverend Warnock. And that's because Reverend Warnock, again, he's a very down-to-earth person. And when he's although he was working and he had staff all over the state, like, he was able to identify folks in his staff and say, I want this person, I want this person, this person. And so I like the fact that he's paid attention to detail. And so yeah.
I knew you knew some people behind the scenes, Derrick. I know you know a lot more people, like on staff and doing the good work.
Oh, yeah. yeah. In fact, one of your Soras is his state director, whom I know. And so she, Meredith Lewis, so she too is doing a lot of the great work. She did a lot of the great work. She was one of the senior advisors to the campaign to help Reverend Warnock to see the victory on January the 5th. And then there are a whole slew of other folks. I got fraternity brothers and, all kind of other folks who worked on the campaign, who were behind the scenes, some folks who were doing digital stuff, some folks who were doing, organizing on the ground. And in the midst of the pandemic, these folks saw the value in Reverend Warnock, and they did not sleep until election night. Literally, a lot of folks.
I am glad that you brought up Reverend Warnock and Stacey Abrams in the work, because we know that these people don't get to where they are by themselves. Like, nobody does.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I think a lot of people, while they don't want us to give Stacey Abrams the credit that we've given her, she is deserving of it. And of course, I've seen her do tons of interviews to say, hey, I did not do this alone. So of course she has, lifted up all of the individuals who've helped, who've already been doing the work before she got on and started to make the movement even larger. And so, just, she's deserving of a Nobel Peace Prize. I'm so excited to see that. Another thing clicked off by a HBCU grad.
Mm-hmm. And then you look at folks, other HBCU alums like Marilyn Mosby out of the state of Maryland, who is the youngest Black woman to ever be a state attorney in the country, period. And she's an HBCU alum. You look at people like Taraji Henson. She's on almost every great movie that's worth seeing. You got P. Diddy or Puff Daddy, whatever his name is nowadays. He's an HBCU alum. You got Samuel Jackson, Oprah Winfrey, all these folks, and they too were very instrumental in helping to get Stacey Abrams to where she is, to helping
Definitely.
Reverend Warnock get to where he is, helping Vice President Kamala get to where she is. And so it was the combination of all those folks working together, not so much for anything other than Black excellence.
Yeah.
And so I love it.
I love it too. And then while we're talking about just politics, because I still like to stay in this vein, and just all of the folks in HBCUs who are currently, in the political world, whether that be, a senator, whether that's the House of Representatives, if they're a part, of the Black Caucus, Congressional Black Caucus, what have you. There are so many people who are already there who've already been doing the work. So, Representative Joyce Beatty out of Ohio, I think she's a Central State grad. Cori Bush, Rep. Cori Bush, I think she's Harris Stowe. So there are a bunch of other people. We could probably just run down the list, but I also like to lift that up too, because as an HBCU grad, you can do whatever you want to. You've seen tons and tons of examples of the different career paths that you can take on. But I think right now we're realizing that this is a time, not just the only time in history. It's basically been, our history has always been to be politically active. But now I think we have a better sense of what it looks like to be politically active. And on your state level, on, your local level, on the next level. So I encourage people to look up these individuals, be inspired by them. Of course, if you want to do the work, like here locally, we have Jordan Johnson, who is, he's one of our commissioners, but he's a young guy and he went to Payne. And so it's just, just always encouraging to see people take part in politics, but you can start at the local level and make an impact there and make change there. So I know you've been so involved in politics and in activism and all that for a very long time. What are some things that you can impress upon folks who just want to know how they can help? Because I think a lot of people have been paralyzed in a few ways that they just don't know. Well, what do I do? How can I get started? What makes sense? Do I attend a protest? Do I try to do it, by running for office? Do I just follow, some of the prompts that folks have said? Do I contact my local rep or make those calls, send those letters? What's kind of the roadmap? What would you advise for just kind of starting to get involved politically?
Yep. So for me, when I got involved, it was literally, I was just fed up with seeing the way that things are happening, especially in my local community. And so I didn't know anybody when I first started doing this work. I was just another kid up in the hood. But what I did was I was watching the news one night, and um, I saw a drive-by shooting happen the night before at an apartment complex, which had the highest crime rate in the city of Greenville, where I'm from. And so I reached out to the apartment manager. Again, I didn't know anybody. I just reached out to her. I saw her name on the internet. I reached out to her through an email, and she responded. And the email basically said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to help. What can I do? So we met, and literally that's how I got involved in activism and in advocacy work. By just being fed up. And so I think people have to first identify like what it is that makes you tick. Like what is it that you're passionate about, and then from that you have to determine like and at what level do you want to be involved, because everybody's not a protester. Everybody can't go to protests. Everybody can't like give money. Everybody can't like make telephone calls. But what is it that you can do? And once you identify what it is that you can do, whether sending a text message, to people saying, "Hey, I want you to support this," or whether it's getting on the phone and calling your local legislator, like figuring out like what, because activism is it's so many different levels of activism and organizing. It's not just like showing up to the protest. That's just one part. And for me, I enjoy going to the protest because it brings people like people come together and they talk about the issues that are important and the issues that are relevant at the time. And then but for me, when I go to protest, I don't leave without an action plan. So we go to the protest, we talk about the issues, and then we come up with a game plan. And so then we leave and we go attempt to accomplish what it is that we're protesting around. So I would encourage people to at least if you can attend one protest. But I would also encourage people to just identify what it is that you're strong at doing, because again, in the summertime when it's 90 degrees outside or 100 degrees outside, and you talking about come to a protest, people are like, no, I'm good. But I know a lot of folks who, especially folks who have, good jobs, or people that are school teachers or people that work in corporate America, like they really can't be at protest, because they may lose their job, or, people that are law enforcement that won't attend. But what they can do is they can support financially. And it could be $5, it could be $10, because a lot of times what people don't realize is that those small donations go a very long way.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of the work that we did around protesting this summer, a lot of the work we were able to do it because of folks who were giving $5 here, $10 here, $20 there. And so I encourage folks to do that. And again, we need people to do research, like tell us like what's being discussed on Capitol Hill, what's being discussed on our local level between our legislators, so that we can go to them and have an intelligent conversation around the issues. So I mean, there's several different ways to get involved, and I would just encourage people to just like find out how you want to be involved, and then just go run in and do it.
That's solid information. I'm glad to hear how you started. I never knew specifically, what got you started into this. So that's really great to hear. And like I said, we will talk more about that because we're hoping to have Derrick on an official episode of the podcast where we, dig a little bit into who you are. But still in the vein of inauguration politics, all of that kind of stuff now. One of the fun things that I kind of love about events that happen that are centered around Black culture is the internet after everything really takes place. And so we get to see fun memes. We get to see just people being jovial and just being fun all together. So for you, what were some of the funniest memes or just anything that you saw surrounding inauguration after it happened? Of course, we saw Bernie went viral, and then he turned that around to something where he could give back, which I thought was really cool. But did anything in particular stick out to you after everything wrapped up?
Yeah, I think the Bernie meme, which I didn't think was gonna ever like die down. I think that was probably the funniest thing. In fact, a couple of days later, I was watching this Facebook IG Live. It was a talent show that was put on by some gospel artist. I forget his name. But anyways, and so one of his guests, when people would come onto the show, because it was a talent show, and people would come on the stage, and they would like, sing horribly or do something that was horrible, he would pull out his mittens and put his mask on and cross his arms like Bernie was doing. And I'm like, and that was his way of saying, you got to go.
Yeah, you out of here.
That was a meme with former President George Bush and First Lady Michelle Obama.
Yeah.
And the meme said that no matter where George Bush is, she's always going to find Michelle Obama. And he was giving her a piece of candy in the video. I mean,
In the
in the
meme.
meme. And so I thought that was funny too, because again, like every time you see George Bush and Michelle Obama around, like they gonna be together doing
This
something.
is not untrue. Like, I don't know what that relationship looks like per se. I would love to know more, but there is so much. They've captured George Bush kind of like, oh, there's Michelle, and he beelining to, go where she
Right.
is. So I want to know more about that. Yeah, I thought all of the memes were funny. There were tons of them. Of course, one of the things that I thought outside of the Bernie meme, or this one wasn't even necessarily a meme, it was just really what happened. It was like, so Kamala's niece, her husband, had on like some really rare sneakers that
Yeah.
everybody was going crazy over, and at first I was like, what is happening? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are these shoes? And I just saw memes and memes after, like, talking about inauguration drip, and one thing about
Right.
black people, we gonna bring the drip. And I was like, you know what? They're not wrong. They are not wrong. I saw the little girls, Kamala's nieces, in like little furs, so they were too cute.
And then also to see folks who were not at the inauguration, but people at home wearing their pearls and wearing their chucks, like
Yes.
that was a thing. And so it was just great to see people around the world showing their support of Kamala Harris by wearing the chucks and wearing the pearls. I thought that was great.
That was cool too. I also wanted to shout out. So shout out to Congressman Clyburn, who like really came through with the South Carolina State nail yawn.
Yes. Yes.
I was like, I love the representation right now. I mean, he was all over too. I saw everybody from South Carolina State was like, "Hey, that's how you represent."
Yeah. But any chance he gets to like throw on some SC State Nelia and represent, he gonna do it. So I do appreciate that too about him, because a lot of times folks, like we don't need to shy away from our lineage, our HBCU lineage, and so I'm glad that folks like Clyburn, who have a national platform, are like putting HBCUs on the national stage.
Yeah, for sure. For this administration, what exactly are you hoping to see over time, and not just as it relates to historically black colleges and universities, but beyond that?
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm very hopeful of is seeing happen like in the next couple of days is President Biden using his executive power that's been granted to him by the Constitution to forgive student loan debt to students who have attended historically black colleges and universities. Because as I mentioned earlier, HBCUs have higher tuition because they don't receive all the funding. And so a lot of times we graduate from college with 2 and 3 and 4 times more debt than our white counterparts.
Mm-hmm.
That's because we're having to pay these high tuition rates. And so I look at that as a step in the right direction in terms of reparations, because I still believe that black folks should have some sort of reparations, and so I think that would be like one component of it.
Yeah.
And so I would say to the tune of at least $50,000 forgiveness. And some folks don't have $50,000, and some folks have more than $50,000, like myself, who I got almost $150,000.
Yeah.
So for me, that would be a great thing. But also making sure that folks who have lost their jobs, that have not been able to find new jobs, folks that have kids that they having to provide, food for, and toiletries and all this and other necessities, making sure that those folks have access to resources, to funding, so that they can make sure that their bills are paid, their lights are on, they're not being evicted. So continue the moratorium on evictions, at least throughout the end of this year, because I don't see COVID going away anytime soon. But also not just giving the folks $2,000 one time, but $2,000 a month. Because I mean, again, now folks like me, like people who have their jobs and people that are doing well, like don't give it to those folks, but give it to the people that really, really need it. Again, because people are really struggling, and so we want to make sure that people have the resources that they need. Also, I'd like to see a really, really, really strong push toward criminal justice reform.
Mm.
And for me, that looks like, giving people who have gone to jail, who've done their time, who completed their probation, giving those folks the opportunity to have their records cleaned after about 8 or so years of no trouble. So if those folks have gone to jail, they've done their time, they've done the trouble for 8 years, like clean their record, let those folks have an opportunity to get their lives back, because there are so many people that have done stuff, in their younger lives, and for the rest of their lives, their criminal record is following them, and so they can't find good jobs.
Yeah.
And so they usually resort back to a life of crime, or they work these dead-end jobs where they really can't even afford to take care of themselves, let alone a family. And so having a true a second chance initiative nationwide. And then also, lastly, what I'd like to see happen in this administration is a restoration of dignity and decency to politics.
Yeah.
And to humanity, because for the last 4 years, like, there has been none whatsoever, and from the White House, and that's led to a lot of racist white people, like, feeling empowered to do what they want to do, say what they want to say, and feel like that they don't have to face, like, the repercussions of their actions. And so just President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris just making sure that they are intentional about restoring human decency to American democracy.
Definitely couldn't have said it better. So I'm so on board with what you just shared. Of course, right now, coronavirus relief and just getting a handle on this virus for the pandemic. That's one of my top hopes for me. Unfortunately, I've seen people and known people that have passed away due to COVID complications, and it does have a lot to do with the former administration and their lack of action when it came to that. And so that is one of the things that I would like to see, crack down on, a real plan around, and for us, much like what you said, to make sure the individuals who are unable to work due to this virus are taken care of and able to stay out of harm's way, because essentially that's what it is. A lot of people are getting sick because they have to go to these jobs to where they're being exposed to the virus. So I would love to see them just really get on board and get that real plan in action, and we can start getting back to, I don't think life will ever be the same really after experiencing a pandemic. I can't say that, but I would like to see it get to a better place, at least where everybody can be in a healthier America. Because right now, there are some days I just look around like, I can't believe this. Like, I'm literally just walking around looking at people in masks. I watched an entire inauguration with everybody with face mask on, like in the middle of a pandemic. It was crazy to see.
Yep, and I do want to also say last thing, definitely making sure that there's a solid plan, and I think they're doing a great job so far of making sure that the vaccines are disseminated and making sure that folks are getting vaccinated. Now, for me, I'm not really, I'm not taking the vaccination, at least not right now. I'm going to wait for at least 6 months, maybe longer, to see how it affects folks.
Right.
But I'm in no hurry. But that's not to say that people shouldn't go and take it. If you feel compelled to take it, by all means, do whatever you feel like you need to do. But yeah, just making sure that they continue to provide folks with that option to have the vaccine, if they so choose. So.
Awesome. Well, listen, you have an invitation back to the HBCU podcast. Of course, we want to chit chat with you a little bit more. Usually when I do one-on-one with guests, we talk a little bit about your HBCU experience and what you're doing now. And of course, I know that you're a Claflinite, but I know that you're also working on another degree at another HBCU. And so, of course, we could chat more about that too. But you guys, thank you for listening. We definitely want you to share any, comments and commentary you have with us at the HBCU podcast on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. And of course, you can email us at the HBCU podcast at gmail.com. Derrick, tell everyone where they can find you. That's, of course, if you have any social handles or websites you'd like to share.
Yep. So on Facebook, my name is Derrick L. Quarles, and that's Quarles. But I'm sure you'll have the spelling on the screen for you. And then on IG and on Twitter and on TikTok, you can find me by using the handle Political Wiz. That's where you'll find me.
Not on a TikTok.
On TikTok. Political Wiz.
I am going to have to check. I do not have a TikTok, y'all. So, of course, that is telling you a lot that you need to know. But one of my good friends, Alatoria Cranford, shout out to her. She, is supposed to be giving me a tutorial at some point. But you guys do follow Derrick on his social media channels. I will say he is very informational, very entertaining, all of that rolled in one. So if there's anybody who does content right, it's definitely him. So he is definitely worth the follow. Derrick, thank you so much for being here and for your conversation. I greatly appreciate it.
No, thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening to the HBCU podcast. We have so much more HBCU content on the way, so make sure you subscribe to the podcast, rate the podcast, and visit us at thehbcupodcast.com. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the HBCU Podcast. Like us on Facebook. We love you for listening. Until next time.